The wine glass slipped in my hand. Not from nerves, but because the base was slick grease from a plate I hadn't ordered on a tray. I hadn't carried at a wedding I was never meant to serve. The kitchen lights flickered above me, and somewhere beyond the swinging door, laughter rose with the clink of champagne. They had put my name, Cassandra Virell, on the caterer list. Not sister of the groom, not CEO of the tech powering their empire. Just a name on a roster. So I made one phone call and pulled $28.5 million from their wedding. Where are you listening from in the world right now? Subscribe for more stories where silence holds the sharpest blade. I was never the favorite. Not that anyone ever said it aloud. But you feel it in the pauses, in the glances, in the way your achievements are politely acknowledged, then moved aside for someone else's story. Asher was that story. He was the golden boy of Glassmore Landing, charming, photogenic, and more importantly, male. He was always destined to inherit Virell Developments, the family construction firm, built brick by our grandfather and coddled into prestige by our father. I was the strange one. I liked systems, patterns, circuits. I taught myself Python at 15 and built my first logistics app by 17. No one in my family downloaded it. At the breakfast table, Asher would talk about sports scholarships and new building sites. Dad would nod proud. When I brought home news that Archivia had made its first $500K deal, my mother blinked and said, "That's nice, dear. Have you considered offering them construction software? Something useful." Useful. I built an AI-powered supply chain optimizer that shaved millions off overhead for Fortune 500 firms. But since it couldn't be touched or paved or shown off on a billboard, it didn't count. So I stopped trying to count. At 39, I ran a company valued at just over $200 million with 68 employees across 3 time zones. I had an apartment in Boston with a balcony view of the harbor, and a man beside me who understood the weight I carried, because he'd built his own empire too. His name was Elias Chang, venture capitalist. Quiet, steady, and sharper than most people realize, just like me. 3 months before the wedding, Archivia signed a deal with Whitmore Group, one of the largest private developers in the Northeast. It was a quiet win secured through a 2-month audit and a brutal negotiation process. I never told my family I was the one who closed it. They wouldn't have believed me anyway. When Asher called to tell me he was marrying Sable Whitmore, the daughter of Edmund Whitmore himself, I blinked once then smiled. It made sense. He'd always wanted the empire without the sweat. And Sable was empire born and bred. "Of course I'll be there," I said. And I meant it. Somewhere in the hollowed-out chambers of hope, I thought this might be a chance to reclaim something. That maybe, just maybe, success would finally translate into belonging. But the past has a way of whispering louder when you're dressed in silk and still feel like you don't belong at the table, especially when you realize they never planned to save you a seat. The Larkmore estate glowed like something out of a political drama. Columns lit from below, crystal chandeliers swaying from sheer white tents, and waitstaff in velvet vests offering champagne with silent precision. I stood just outside the marble foyer, heels on gravel, watching my breath ghost in the early spring air. Elias appeared beside me, brushing a loose curl behind my ear. "You don't have to go in first," he murmured. "I'm not scared," I said. "No," he nodded. "You're calculating." He was right. I wasn't scared. I was simply bracing. Inside, the air was warm and perfumed with orchids and money. Every detail screamed curated opulence, gold-rimmed name cards, live cello trio, and a branded ice sculpture that read S&A EST. 2024 dripping in soft white light. My mother spotted me first. "Oh, there you are," she said, stepping close with air-kissed precision. "Lovely dress, navy, very practical." "This is Elias," I said. Her smile brightened only for Elias. "Ah, you've met someone wonderful. How nice." She waved me along like a staff member late to a shift. "Your father's with Richard and the others, big talk, big men. Come greet them." I hadn't taken 3 steps into the reception when I heard it. "Cut logistics cost by 18% in the first quarter alone," Richard Whitmore was saying. "Truly brilliant software." "Oh yes," my father chimed in. "Asher found the perfect partner company for us. Always had a sharp eye, that boy." I blinked. The muscles in my jaw tightened so subtly even I almost missed it. Richard turned toward me. "And this must be Cassandra, yes." "Yes." His hand was firm, his tone respectful. "Your team at Archivia is outstanding. Eleanor can't stop praising your implementation crew." My father laughed before I could respond. "Well, she's always been good with tech things, our Cassie. But it's really Asher who closed the deal. We're a family unit after all." I looked at Elias. His brows lifted just slightly, but it said enough. Later, over wine, he asked quietly, "Is this how they always talk over you?" I didn't answer. I just sipped my drink. Because that silence, That was the answer. The night before the wedding, I called Asher. Not because I needed anything, but because I wanted to believe just for once that he'd remember I was more than an afterthought. He picked up on the third ring, breathless. Background noise, voices, clinking glass, someone yelling about flower arrangements. "Hey Cass," he said. "What's up? Everything okay? I just wanted to check in." Elias and I are confirmed right. Seating entrance, all that. Yeah, he rushed. The planners got it handled. Some last-minute reshuffling, but nothing big. I paused. Reshuffling. Just a few business guests Richard wanted to include. VIPs. "Don't worry, you're covered." "I'm not worried," I said. But I was. Not because I feared inconvenience, but because I knew the tone Asher used when he was smoothing something over. The next morning, I arrived early. A valet took my keys. The sky was crisp and cold, the kind of cold that doesn't sting, but sits heavy in your chest. The wedding coordinator, a young woman with nervous eyes and a tablet, greeted me. Name: Cassandra Virell. She frowned, tapped, then blinked fast. "Oh yes, right this way." She handed me a lanyard. It was thick plastic, not one of the elegant ones given to family or guests. On it, in bold letters, FOH, catering access. I stared at it. Behind her, someone wheeled a cart of mini lobster rolls past the kitchen archway. A man in black sleeves shouted, "Hands on table 4." The planner smiled thinly. "You'll be helping with champagne service. You and your guest." "My guest," I repeated. She nodded, already distracted. "Mr. Chang, right? He has a tag too." I didn't move. I didn't hand the badge back. I didn't protest. I simply stepped aside, pulled my phone out, and took a photo of the lanyard. Then I folded it once, slid it into my clutch. Elias approached, his brow furrowed. "You good?" I handed him the other badge. "We've been reassigned." He glanced at the plastic, then at me. "You're not angry?" "No," I said. I smiled. Anger would be too generous. The kitchen was chaos cloaked in stainless steel. Steam hissed from industrial ovens. Someone dropped a tray of eclairs, and orders were being barked in 3 different accents. The kind of rhythm that only comes when the stakes are rich and the tips are higher. In the far corner, taped to the prep board beside a clipboard of dietary restrictions, was a printed schedule. I moved closer. Service team roster, Larkmore Estate wedding. FOH runner Cass V. E. Cheng, assigned champagne. Dessert table, midnight reset. Below that, my initials again next to a scribbled shift time. 17:00:30. A name, a job, not a guest, not a sister, a server. I let out a soft breath, the kind that doesn't shake. Then I heard her heels before I saw her. Click, click, pause. "Is this where they've got you now?" came Sable's voice, sugary and crisp like over-whipped meringue. "I hope they're paying you overtime. It's a long night." She was in her wedding robe, white satin with bride spelled in faux diamonds across the back. Her hair was in curlers, her lips already glossed. I turned slow. "Not quite overtime," I said. "Just tying up a few things." Her eyes flicked to the roster, then back to me. "It's nothing personal, Cassandra. We just had to prioritize certain seats." "Of course," I replied, voice flat. "Guests of real importance." "Exactly," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's not about status. It's about contribution." I held her gaze, long enough that it made her shift her weight just slightly. "Speaking of contribution," I murmured, reaching into my clutch. I pulled out a matte black USB. Simple, unassuming. Then I plugged it into the laptop sitting unattended near the espresso station, and waited. The screen blinked. Files loaded. I clicked. Archivia Master Agreement. Whitmore Final.pdf. I printed 2 copies. Sable didn't ask what I was doing, but she watched. When the printer whirred to life, she flinched. I slipped 1 copy into a slim envelope and tucked it inside my clutch again. The other I left on the silver counter, right beside the list that had my name misspelled. I turned to her one last time. "Enjoy your reception," I said, brushing past her. "It's the last one powered by my company." The tent shimmered under gold light. Cascading drapes floated like clouds overhead. String quartet music danced behind the hum of 100 conversations, clinking glasses, and curated laughter. Elias fell into step beside me. "You sure?" he murmured. I nodded once. "It's time." Asher was standing on the low platform near the head table. One hand on the mic, the other casually draped around Sable's waist. His tuxedo fit like it had been tailored for a magazine spread. "And thanks to our partnership with Archivia, we've streamlined our entire operations," he was saying. "It's an exciting future." I moved through the crowd without pause. No one stopped me. Just before I reached the table, I heard him say, "And I have to thank my family for trusting me with this vision, especially our father for teaching me what real leadership looks like." "Of course." I stepped up just as he was placing the mic down. Richard Whitmore, seated beside him, looked up at me with polite confusion. Sable stiffened. I placed the envelope gently in the center of the white linen tablecloth, directly between the wine glasses and the floral centerpiece. "What's this?" Asher asked, voice caught between curiosity and annoyance. "Just some paperwork," I said evenly. "From the catering team." Chuckles rippled nearby. I didn't smile. Richard reached forward and pulled out the document. His brow furrowed as he scanned the top line. Then he froze, his voice low and certain. "This is the original agreement with Archivia." "That's right," I replied. Richard looked at me properly this time. You're the CEO." I held his gaze. "And your team has already implemented phase 1. But unfortunately, we've encountered cultural incompatibilities." Sable's face blanched. "This is not the place." "It's exactly the place," I said, "since this is where you chose to seat me." A ripple of silence spread like ink across the table. I looked at Asher last. His mouth opened, closed. He had nothing. I leaned in just slightly. "Enjoy the rest of your wedding," I said. "Your tech access ends at midnight." Then I turned and walked away, heels clicking louder than any applause I never got. The sky had darkened to deep navy by the time I stepped onto the stone terrace behind the tent. Inside, the music picked up again, jazz, now upbeat, desperate to paper over the silence I'd left behind. I stood still, letting the wind pull at the silk hem of my dress. My fingers were steady as I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Gregory Phillips, COO at Archivia. One ring, then two. He picked up with his usual calm. "Cassandra, it's done," I said. "Terminate the Whitmore contract. Use Clause 4.2, violation of cultural and professional conduct. Make it effective immediately." He didn't ask why. He knew. "Consider it handled," he replied. "And good for you." I hung up without another word. Inside the tent, I saw them through the open flap, my father looking flushed, my mother whispering sharply into Sable's ear, Richard on his phone already working damage control, and Asher, frozen, pale, staring down at the envelope like it might catch fire. That was when I realized there was nothing more to say, nothing more to earn, no seat to claim at that table because I had built my own and it had always been stronger than theirs. I exhaled slowly. The salt air hit my lungs like a reset button. And somewhere behind me, Elias stepped closer, warm and wordless. We didn't speak. We didn't need to, because silence when chosen, not imposed, is power. By Monday morning, the ripple had become a wave. I arrived at the Archivia office just before 8, the Boston skyline still softened by morning mist. The automatic doors whooshed open to the soft hum of espresso machines and clicking keyboards. Inside, everything moved with the kind of efficiency I'd spent the last decade perfecting. Except this morning, there was a different energy. Tense, expectant. Sarah, my assistant, met me before I reached my desk. "You've had 17 emails flagged urgent from Whitmore," she said. 4 voicemails from Eleanor Wright, 2 from Richard Whitmore's office, and a LinkedIn message from Tiffany, their PR director. "Tiffany." I set my bag down gently. "Anyone call directly. Gregory's been here since 7, waiting upstairs." Of course he was. I walked into my office, glass walls, minimal decor, clean steel lines, and found Gregory, our COO, pacing. He didn't start with small talk. "So, do we treat this as temporary damage control or full severance?" "Full," I said, removing my coat. "It's over." He nodded only once. "Clause 4.2. And 6.1, I replied. "Unprofessional conduct and reputational harm." He whistled softly. "They won't go quietly." "They already didn't," I said. "Now it's our turn to define the silence." I opened my laptop and pulled up the contract. Archivia's deal with Whitmore Group had been the largest deployment in our last quarter, a full implementation of our predictive inventory software and cloud infrastructure across 8 of their commercial hubs. A deal I had secured after Eleanor Wright reached out to us without ever knowing I was related to the groom. That fact had remained unspoken by me, not out of secrecy, but because I believed in boundaries, in merit. Turns out they didn't. Before I could lose the nerve, I drafted a clean, non-negotiable termination letter. No emotional language. Just fact. Just wait. By 9:00 a.m., our legal team was already looped in. By 9:45, Eleanor called me directly. "Cassandra," she said, "no preamble, no pretense. Please tell me what happened." So I did, in 2 sentences. I was seated in the kitchen, intentionally, while your CEO publicly praised my company and credited my brother. There was silence on her end. Then a heavy exhale. "I didn't know," she said. "I swear to you if I had." "You didn't need to," I interrupted. "This isn't about you, Eleanor. You've been a consummate professional. This is about culture and clarity." "I understand," she said quietly, and I believed her. Later that morning, I called an all-hands executive meeting. Our team, strong, diverse, unapologetically excellent, filed into the glass conference room. Gregory presented the updated forecast charts accounting for the immediate loss of the Whitmore revenue stream. Even with the pullout, he said we're still 118% above Q2 last year. I stood, looked around the table. We're not just a tech company, I told them. We're a company that builds with intention. We work with people who respect the systems, the code, and the humans behind them. They didn't need a dramatic speech, just a compass. And I gave them one. Effective immediately, I said we're reallocating our East Coast deployment team to coastal development. There were nods, murmured approval. They've been courting us since Q1, Gregory added. And after this morning's press leak, they sent a new offer, 15% above our Whitmore rate. A soft rumble of reaction moved through the room. Let them see, I said. Let them all see. Outside the boardroom, the article had already dropped. A well-known real estate tech publication ran the headline, and sister of groom cancels 28 miles. Contract at wedding CEO, power move, or family feud. It included blurry footage clearly shot by a guest of me placing the envelope on the head table. The comments were already split. Some called it petty, others iconic. Most intrigued. By noon, my phone buzzed with a private call from a number I recognized. Not Richard, not Sable. It was my father. I didn't answer. Instead, I stepped into my office and let the door whisper shut behind me. I pulled up our internal mentorship platform. Visible launched 6 months ago to support women entrepreneurs in male-dominated industries. Women like me, women unlike me, but all familiar with the quiet dismissal. I uploaded a new video, just under 3 minutes. No music, no makeup, just me in a charcoal blazer looking straight into the lens. Sometimes I said you build the entire table, the structure, the chairs, the software that runs the guest list. And they still seat you in the kitchen. That's not your failure, that's theirs. But it becomes yours if you keep sitting there. I ended with a quote I'd repeated to myself for years. The moment you stop explaining your worth is the moment others start recalculating theirs. That evening, Elias cooked. Nothing dramatic. Roasted carrots with cumin, a warm grain bowl, and Pinot Noir we'd been saving. We sat on my balcony, the skyline now a ribbon of silver and blush. You're calm, he said, handing me my glass. I'm clear, I replied. A beat passed. You think Asher understands what just happened? No, I said, but I think he feels it, and that's enough. Elias studied me. You don't want revenge, do you? No, I said, letting the words settle. I want respect, and I want to stop pretending they'll ever give it. He raised his glass. To your version of peace, he said. I clinked gently against his. To mine, I echoed. The next day, my inbox held a message from Eleanor. Cassandra, I'm sorry, not just for the seating. For the years you've had to navigate that kind of erasure. I hope we work together again, not under Richard, but under leadership like yours. I sat back, reread her message twice, then replied, So do I. Let's build it. I returned just as the first toast began. A soft murmur spread across the tent as I walked in. No longer the woman standing in the kitchen, but someone people suddenly weren't sure how to define. Marcus, still in place near the edge of the crowd, met my eyes with a slight nod, the kind that said, You're not done yet, and you know it. At the head table, Richard leaned over to whisper something to his assistant, his expression tight. Asher saw me too. His shoulders straightened, but his face paled. He knew something had shifted. I didn't walk to them. I walked to the AV booth. Excuse me, I said to the technician who blinked at me in surprise. I'm Cassandra Virell, CEO of Archivia Systems. He looked between me and the screen. Okay, power down the platform. Ma'am, I was told. I held up my phone. I just revoked access. You'll lose cloud sync in 3 minutes. He stared. Then the screen flickered. A soft gasp rippled through the room. It was the dashboard Whitmore's custom Archivia interface going black. Another flicker. Then a red message, access terminated. Behind me, someone said, Is that supposed to happen? I turned just in time to see Richard rise from his chair. He was fast for a man his age. What the hell is going on? He made it to me in 6 strides, fury etched into every line on his face. You did this. Yes, I said calmly. At midnight, our legal team will finalize contract termination. Clause 4.2, conduct unbecoming of a client relationship. You can't. I already have. His voice lowered, hissing. Do you have any idea what you've done? The system is integrated across 12 properties. 14, I corrected. And yes, I know exactly what I've done. Asher appeared behind him, tugging at his jacket. Richard, we can talk. No, you talk, I said, facing my brother. You knew exactly what Sable did. You knew I was seated with the staff, and you let it happen. His lips parted, closed, opened again. I didn't think it would. Would what matter be noticed cost you your new kingdom? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Because every word, every syllable was clean. Lethal. Sable was still seated watching with eyes wide-mouthed trembling. She stood adjusting her gown. This is incredibly unprofessional, she spat. Do you know how many influential people are watching? Yes, I replied. They're exactly why I'm doing it now. And then I pulled out the final blow, my phone. I opened an email, then tapped play. Eleanor's voice rang through the connected speaker system, clear and firm. Cassandra, I'm so sorry about what happened. You deserved better. Your brother never should have hidden who you are. And Richard never should have dismissed you like a vendor. Archivia is more than software. It's your legacy. I hope you never let anyone bury that again. The room was silent. Richard's face crumpled. Asher's jaw clenched. Sable looked ready to scream, but even she understood this wasn't her moment. The guests began whispering. Not small talk, but real conversation. Questions. Doubt. Reassessment. This wasn't just family drama. This was the exposure of a hierarchy built on image and the fall of those who tried to erase the builder. I looked once more at the people who claimed to be family. Then I walked back toward Elias, who stood near the exit with quiet pride in his eyes. As we walked out together, someone caught my arm. It was Olivia, my cousin. I saw what they did, she said, voice soft. And I saw what you did. I met her gaze. Good, I said. Don't forget it. The air outside hit like clarity. Not cold, not cruel, just crisp. We got into the car. Elias drove. Neither of us said anything for 5 minutes. Then he exhaled. That was surgical. Thank you. Do you regret it? I watched the trees blur past the estate fading behind us. No, I said. Because they'll remember this day longer than they would have remembered me as just another guest. He smiled. They'll remember you as the CEO who made the wedding collapse in silence. No, I corrected. They'll remember I was the one who built the system they bragged about while seating me in the kitchen. And then took it away, he added. I nodded. Exactly. As the sun dipped below the tree line, I realized something I hadn't before. I didn't burn the bridge. I just stopped pretending it was mine to cross. And somehow that was even louder. 3 weeks later, the wedding was a whisper. I didn't ask for updates, but updates found me. Whitmore Group's implementation stalled. Their tech team scrambled to migrate to a new platform. Eleanor resigned quietly 2 days after our last message. Richard stopped showing up to board meetings. Asher, still silent. My parents sent flowers to my office. The card read, "We didn't understand. We're sorry." I didn't respond. I wasn't angry. I was just done explaining what should have been obvious. Meanwhile, Archivia finalized a new deal with Coastal Development, larger, cleaner, with full control on our terms. At the signing, their CEO said, "We wanted more than a system. We wanted a partner who knows their value." And I smiled because that's exactly what I'd become. Not someone waiting for a seat, but someone who builds the damn table. That weekend, Elias and I drove to the Cape. No meetings, no phones, just wind salt and a silence I chose. Not one forced on me. On the final night, I watched the waves crash under moonlight, and I thought of every time I'd been seated in the kitchen. Dismissed, uncounted, but not anymore. Now I count myself. And maybe that was the revenge all along. Have you ever been placed in the kitchen while others used your work to shine? Would you have walked out or stayed for the cake? Tell Sophia your story in the comments. Subscribe for more stories of justice, power, and women who know when to walk away.